You may be surprised at the title of this video, but this is an opinion that I see all of the time within the Knights of the Old Republic community. If you go through my comment sections, you will find somebody saying that they believe that Revan is the unofficial chosen one of the Old Republic era. You'll often see people saying that perhaps Anakin's bloodline is the bloodline of Revan because their bloodline is the chosen bloodline. And while it's an interesting concept, I find it kind of fascinating how many people actually believe this idea. And so that's what I want to talk about in today's video. Is Revan the chosen one of the Old Republic? Now, I want to be explicitly clear that everything I say in this video is just an opinion, and it's not something that I fully agree with anyway, but if you don't agree with it, that's fine, because I think I'll upset quite a few of you with this one. But I want to start off by saying no. Revan is not the chosen one of the Old Republic. I'm happy to sit here and discuss it and say that it's an interesting concept because there are threads that could link the two, that the idea that every major era of Star Wars has one heroic chosen figure, but to me it kind of negates the point of Revan's character, and it also takes important precedence away from Anakin Skywalker. If you decide to truly believe that Revan is the chosen one, then I think you have missed the point of Revan and the Jedi Exile as characters, and especially the Revan that was introduced in KOTOR 2. There are of course extreme similarities between Anakin and Revan, and it is fun to delve into those similarities. However, there are also a lot of major differences between the two characters. And the fundamental difference between these two characters is that Anakin Skywalker had the weight of the world thrust upon him, and Revan chose to carry the weight of the world. The reality was that no matter how powerful and special Anakin was, he wasn't trusted because of that expectation, and Anakin just wanted to love his wife and be loved in return. But because of the power that was given to him by the Order, and the expectation people had of him because of that power, he felt he was owed and needed more and more and more to keep what really mattered most to him safe. Revan, on the other hand, had no expectation placed upon him. Yes, he was very intelligent, yes, he was very powerful, and yes, his galactic impact was extreme. But in every single instance of his actions throughout history was the choice and the intent to do something with what he had and to learn and to grow that power. Revan didn't just inherit a gift and be told that he was special. He worked extremely hard to be the best he could be and utilised the cards that he had in his hand to full effect. Revan understood that he was strong, and Revan understood that he could help the helpless, and if he had to use that power to do bad things, to be willing to fall into the abyss to do so, he would do it of his own volition. That is why, fundamentally, Revan could not be a chosen one, because if he was chosen by the will of the Force, then it would simply go against the entire nature of what Revan is supposed to represent. Revan is not guided by the Force. Revan does not do what Revan does because it is the will of the Force. Revan does what Revan does because he's human, and he believes it's the right thing to do, and that the idea of light and dark and binary black and white thinking is what holds everybody back, and to understand the Force, one must understand all of its aspects. And instead of being chosen by an ideology or by something else's will, he chose to become that unofficial champion and enact his own will. And then we also have to consider the idea of the chosen one anyway. What is the chosen one prophecy? The idea that one will bring balance to the Force. First and foremost, the wording in itself kind of negates the concept of there being more than one chosen one, right? If you have multiple chosen ones, then it begins to kind of lose merit. You're not the chosen one, you have the chosen two, or the chosen 3 or 4, depending on how many you're going to have. Then, of course, we have to consider the idea of balancing the Force. Now, this is very much open to your interpretation of Star Wars, and don't let anybody tell you that what you believe isn't true. George Lucas's belief was that bringing balance to the Force was essentially bringing an end to the dark side, and that the dark side was an aberration. that needed to be removed, and that the concept of balance wasn't necessarily powerful yin and yang. But this is contradicted so much even in the current canon, as well as George's canon, and it's actually one of the very few things that frustrates me when it comes to Star Wars fans, is the idea of balancing the Force. People are obsessed with what it means, but the problem is, Star Wars doesn't even know what it means when it talks about balancing the Force. All you have to do is go through canon and the expanded universe and you will find so many different interpretations, it's ridiculous. I mean, in canon alone, you have the Bendu who literally spouts on about how the Force in balance is actually understanding the light and dark. Then you also have the whole Prime Jedi stuff, which is essentially the yin and yang of Star Wars, and that you need both in The Last Jedi, and even the dyad stuff with Rey and Kylo. And then in Legends, you've got Dark Jedi and Grey Jedi and all of this stuff that's legitimate in those stories. But then you also talk to canon fans, and even some creators of Star Wars canon, who will call you silly for saying that the dark side is part of that balance. So it really comes down to your own interpretation. But I don't believe that Anakin Skywalker ever brought balance to the Force, and how could he? The Force is the mystical energy of Star Wars. It existed before Anakin and it will exist after Anakin, and the Force is very split, as we can see, and it always will be when normal people are the ones using it. And so if someone was to bring balance to the Force, then you kind of have to conclude the story with the Force being balanced, and that's that. But here's the thing, if Star Wars ended with Episode 6, Anakin kills the Sith, returns to the light, then absolutely you can say that George Lucas's idea of bringing balance was inherently true, that the dark side was the imbalance, the Sith were the imbalance, that Anakin's purpose of bringing balance to the Force was fulfilled. But the problem is, Star Wars didn't end, which is why George Lucas's ideology when it comes to that very purpose in the story can only really exist within the confines of those 6 episodes, and that's true to George Lucas's vision for those movies. But within the grander story, it just can't. And this is where we have to consider that the Chosen One is just a creation of flawed people. The Jedi wanted a hero, the Sith wanted a hero, and so they created an idea that one would come along. The Force itself did not create the concept of the Chosen One. The Force did not tell the Jedi to write in their doctrines that a Chosen One would appear. The Jedi just believed it would happen. It was their creation. Now yes, we do have to consider the idea that Plagueis' tampering with the Force was what caused the Force to reciprocate and create Anakin, but that is just a response by the Force, not necessarily the validation of a Jedi prophecy. And this is the same idea that many people attribute to Revan being a Chosen One, because the entirety of the Mandalorian Wars was an imbalance created by the Sith themselves. It was tampered with by the Sith, much like Plagueis was with the midichlorians, and the war and destruction was caused by the dark side, so the Force reciprocated much like it did with Anakin and Plagueis in creating Revan to save the galaxy. But the thing is here, in what regard would that make Anakin more chosen than Revan? What makes Anakin more chosen than Luke? Makes Anakin more chosen than the hero of Tython or the Jedi Exile? As Yoda goes on to say, a prophecy that misread could have been. To me, the real tragedy of Anakin Skywalker is not that he was the Chosen One, but that he was forced to be the Chosen One, and everybody forced him to live the life of the Chosen One. Anakin Skywalker couldn't tell his own story because he was chained by 2 ideologies that push and pulled him with beliefs that deified him, and the things that he wanted were things that he couldn't have because people expected the world from him. In the end, Anakin was just normal. He was a flawed man. Yes, he was gifted, yes, he was powerful, but so were so many Sith and Jedi throughout history, and they were not chosen. Jedi and Sith throughout history had actually done bigger things than Anakin Skywalker, and they weren't chosen. Now, I'm sure many of you are going to say, well, Luke, what about the whole Mortis arc? But I think the Mortis arc is actually a representation of how Star Wars doesn't even understand its own concept of balance. In the Mortis arc, you have 3 extremely ethereal, powerful, Force-like god beings who represent the balance, the son, the father, and the daughter, the light, the dark, and what's in between. This alone goes inherently against the idea that the dark side is an aberration. Anyway, we know in those stories that they didn't create Anakin despite being literal Force gods, they simply knew of the Chosen One because of the idea brought down by a prophecy, and that they believed Anakin was chosen just like the Jedi did, so we know they aren't responsible for Anakin. And then we also have to consider the Wills, who are the literal gods of Star Wars, but if we delve into that, things just become convoluted. The Wills are so obscure that I don't think we can really talk about them in a literal sense. And so this brings me back to Revan. No, Revan was not chosen. He chose his own story, he followed his own path, and that is why so many of us relate to the character, not just because he's essentially a projection of ourselves, but because he wasn't controlled. Even during the events of Knights of the Old Republic, you are choosing that story, and even in the canonical story of KOTOR, by its conclusion, he chose his path, and he chose to go against the Jedi to be in love with Bastila, and to risk walking that fine path between the two ideologies. We have to consider that there is no chosen one in Star Wars. There is a grand mystical power that is gifted to flawed people, and then those flawed people make the decisions on how they wish to utilize the grand mystical power, and in that process, the grand mystical power is allowed to flow freely across the spectrum of life. This was just kind of one of those videos where I talk about something that's interesting to me, because I do find the whole concept fascinating, and I love the whole idea of Anakin and Revan being essentially the foil to one another. Now I am really excited to see what you guys have to say, because I'm sure this will stir up quite a bit of debate. But I really do want your general opinion on this topic. Do you think that Revan was a chosen one, or has my view on this maybe changed yours? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button so YouTube knows you had a good time, and subscribe and hit the notification bell to join the biggest growing Knights of the Old Republic community on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.